The hum of the private jet was a soft, almost hypnotic background noise, but today, it couldn't mask the sharp, piercing cries of a baby. Jonathan Pierce, a billionaire tech mogul known for his empire of innovation and luxury, cradled his infant daughter, Lila, in his arms. The spacious cabin was quiet, with plush leather seats, golden accents, and the faint scent of designer candles, but all of it was irrelevant as the baby screamed. Jonathan's normally calm, commanding demeanor cracked ever so slightly. He whispered her name softly, rocking her gently. "Shit's okay, baby girl, Daddy's here." But Lila's cries only intensified, echoing through the cabin, bouncing off the walls and piercing the otherwise serene luxury. Jonathan tried humming, tried singing, even the lullaby he had memorized word for word, yet nothing worked. Around him, passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A few of the crew exchanged awkward glances. Flight attendants hovered, unsure if a toy, a song, or medication could help. Jonathan's private assistant, visibly anxious, muttered options under his breath, but Jonathan shook his head, frustration creeping over him, not at Lila, but at the helplessness that clawed at his chest. He hated seeing her distressed, hated that all his wealth, all his resources, couldn't give her peace in this moment. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of helplessness, when out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something unusual at the very back of the plane. A small boy, maybe 12 years old, sat quietly in the economy section. His eyes, wide, calm, observant, were fixed on the scene unfolding. He clutched a small, worn stuffed rabbit to his chest, almost like a talisman. The boy's name was Malik. Malik's life had been anything but easy. Growing up in a struggling neighborhood, he had learned to care for his younger siblings from a young age. While other kids his age played in parks or video games, Malik ran errands, cooked small meals, and helped bathe his brothers and sisters while his parents juggled multiple jobs. Life had taught him resilience, patience, and above all, empathy, the kind that goes beyond simple gestures, that understands emotion on a deeper level. Despite the hardships, Malik had a natural gift, a rare ability to connect with children, to understand their cries, their fears, their needs. This wasn't something he had learned from books or classes, it was instinct, born from a lifetime of caring. And today, on this private jet, he felt a tug in his chest at the sight of Lila's continuous crying. Without hesitation, Malik nudged the flight attendant beside him. "Can I go help her?" he asked softly. His voice was calm but filled with determination. "I think I can make her feel better." The flight attendant hesitated, glancing at Jonathan, a man whose reputation was as vast as his fortune. She opened her mouth to protest, but something in Malik's confident yet humble eyes made her pause. With a slight nod, she allowed him to approach, giving him the green light to move forward. Jonathan barely noticed at first, lost in a fog of exhaustion and worry. But then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw the boy approaching, a small figure walking calmly through the luxurious cabin, holding only a worn stuffed rabbit, his gaze fixed gently on Lila. Malik stopped beside Jonathan, looked down at the crying infant, and said softly, almost reverently, "Hi, my name is Malik. Can I try?" Jonathan blinked. He had everything money could buy, world-class nannies, top pediatricians, the finest toys, but here was a child, holding nothing but a ragged toy, offering help. He hesitated. Skepticism warred with desperation. Finally, he nodded. "All right, you can try." Malik knelt beside Lila, speaking in a soft, melodic tone, his small hands gently rocking her. He held out the stuffed rabbit, letting the baby feel its comforting softness. Slowly, almost magically, Lila's cries began to soften. Jonathan watched in disbelief as her tears slowed, then stopped, her tiny fingers reaching for Malik's hand. By the time Malik smiled at her, Lila's eyes sparkled with curiosity instead of distress. For Jonathan, the sight was transformative. In the sterile world of business deals, wealth, and luxury, he had never encountered anything like this, a pure, selfless act of kindness from a child who had almost nothing, yet had everything that mattered at that moment. He wanted to offer Malik a reward, perhaps something extravagant, but the boy simply shook his head, smiling wide and genuine. "I just wanted to help," Malik said. Jonathan felt a warmth in his chest that money could never buy. He realized then that the flight would not be remembered for its luxury, its comforts, or even its destination, but for the extraordinary act of compassion that had brought peace to his daughter's heart. The cabin was filled with a quiet anticipation as Malik knelt beside Lila. Jonathan remained seated, tense yet hopeful, his arms ready to step in if needed. The baby's cries had dwindled to small whimpers, her tiny body trembling slightly, but Malik's presence radiated calm. Malik smiled softly and whispered, "It's okay, Lila, you're safe. I won't let anything scare you." Then, almost instinctively, he offered the stuffed rabbit to the baby. Lila reached for it hesitantly at first, her tiny fingers brushing the fabric. Malik gently guided it into her hands, rocking it along with her. Jonathan watched, completely mesmerized. This was more than a child's playful attempt. It was an instinctive, natural skill that seemed to bypass all the tricks he had tried. Lila's sobs faded entirely, replaced with soft coos, curious eyes following Malik's movements. The boy's patience and understanding were extraordinary, a stark contrast to the fast-paced, high-stakes world Jonathan inhabited. "Where did you learn to do this?" Jonathan asked, his voice low, almost reverent. Malik shrugged, a modest smile on his face. "I just know, I take care of my little siblings all the time. Babies like me, they need someone who listens." Jonathan's chest tightened. In all his years, surrounded by luxury and opulence, he had never encountered anyone so pure in intention. Here was a boy whose life had been full of struggles, yet who carried no bitterness, only empathy and generosity. The flight attendant, hovering nearby, whispered quietly, "Sir, he's really good. I've never seen a baby calm down like that so quickly." Jonathan nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I can see that," Malik continued, softly humming a tune he often sang to his siblings. "He didn't rush, he didn't fumble. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture patient." Lila's tiny fingers curled around Malik's hand, a connection forming without words. Jonathan's eyes glistened. He had spent thousands trying to find the perfect solution, yet here it was, a simple act of understanding and kindness. As the minutes passed, Jonathan decided to do something small in return, a gesture that was meaningful yet understated. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped chocolate, offering it to Malik. "You deserve this," Jonathan said, his voice unsteady. "For helping her, for everything." Malik's eyes widened slightly, but he shook his head. "I don't need it, sir, I just wanted to help." Jonathan smiled through the emotion swelling in his chest. There was something humbling about this boy, a quiet dignity that no amount of wealth could teach. Here was someone who gave freely, expecting nothing in return. For the first time, Jonathan allowed himself to fully breathe, to absorb the magnitude of the moment. He watched as Malik gently placed the stuffed rabbit next to Lila, letting her clutch it while he held her hand. The baby's laughter, a tiny, joyful sound, echoed through the cabin, causing a few passengers to glance over, smiling despite themselves. Jonathan leaned back in his seat, a mix of amazement and gratitude washing over him. "I wish I could bottle this moment," he muttered to himself. It's priceless." Malik glanced at him and said softly, "It's not about money, it's about caring, about being there when someone needs you." Jonathan felt a lump rise in his throat. He had read countless business books, mastered negotiation strategies, and built empires, but no lesson had ever prepared him for the power of simple, selfless kindness. The rest of the flight continued with an unusual sense of harmony. Malik stayed nearby, occasionally whispering to Lila or adjusting her tiny blanket. The billionaire observed quietly, learning something more valuable than any deal or acquisition: how much a little care, a little attention, could change a person's world. Passengers who had been tense moments earlier now relaxed. Some smiled knowingly at Jonathan, while others glanced curiously at Malik, noticing the profound effect the boy had on the cabin atmosphere. A ripple of warmth spread, subtle but unmistakable. As the plane leveled off at cruising altitude, Jonathan decided to speak again, more directly this time. "Malik, you're extraordinary. You have a gift, don't ever forget that." Malik shook his head modestly. "I'm not extraordinary, I just pay attention, that's all." But Jonathan could see it clearly. This boy's empathy, patience, and courage were indeed extraordinary. And it wasn't just a fleeting moment, it was a quality that would follow him throughout his life. Before long, a quiet understanding formed between the two. Jonathan recognized that wealth could provide comfort, safety, and opportunity, but it couldn't replace the intangible qualities Malik possessed. And Malik, in turn, saw that sometimes even the most powerful people needed help, needed human connection, just as much as anyone else. Jonathan reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a small, handwritten note. He scribbled a few words, folded it neatly, and handed it to Malik. "If you ever need anything at all, this is my number. I mean it." Malik's eyes widened, the boy unaccustomed to such gestures, but instead of awe or expectation, he simply smiled and nodded. "Thank you, I'll remember." What would you do if you discovered someone with incredible talent living in such difficult circumstances? Let me know your thoughts below. I read every comment. The first encounter between Jonathan and Malik was more than just a baby being soothed. It was a meeting of worlds. One man, accustomed to power and control, and one boy, molded by hardship but rich in empathy, had found a bridge through kindness. In those moments, the plane was no longer a luxury jet or a transport vessel. It became a sanctuary of human connection. Malik's actions had not only calmed Lila, they had shifted the entire dynamic of the cabin. Jonathan realized he had witnessed a rare truth. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, had the power to transform lives instantly, and in this case, it was about to ripple far beyond the walls of the plane. As Malik returned to his seat briefly, Jonathan looked out the window, eyes reflecting both clouds and contemplation. He knew this was only the beginning, that this chance encounter had set the stage for something far greater than either of them could imagine, and for Malik, it was a confirmation of everything he had always believed, that even in a world of challenges, a single act of genuine care could make the impossible happen. The days following that fateful flight were filled with quiet reflection for Jonathan Pierce. The image of Malik kneeling beside Lila, soothing her with nothing but patience and a stuffed rabbit, replayed in his mind incessantly. He couldn't stop thinking about the boy, his humility, his empathy, and the quiet dignity that seemed to radiate from every movement. Jonathan made a decision. He contacted the airline discreetly and asked to meet Malik again. "I want to meet the boy who changed my daughter's world," he said simply. He didn't yet know how far-reaching this encounter would become, but he felt a deep pull, something beyond gratitude or obligation. Meanwhile, Malik returned to his daily life in his modest neighborhood. He helped his siblings with homework, cooked meals, and cared for his little sister as if she were the most precious treasure in the world. And yet, he couldn't forget the man on the plane, the billionaire whose life seemed so unattainable, yet who had treated him with genuine respect. When Jonathan finally arranged a meeting, it wasn't the grand, ostentatious affair one might expect. He visited Malik's neighborhood quietly, arriving in an unmarked car. Malik's eyes widened at the sight of the man who had seemed larger than life on the plane, now standing humbly at his doorstep. "Hello, Malik," Jonathan said, crouching slightly so he could meet the boy at eye level. "I wanted to thank you again, for everything, and I wanted to see if we could spend some time together. Lila misses you." Malik hesitated. Part of him wanted to shrink away. After all, billionaires lived in a world so far removed from his own that it felt almost like fiction. Yet, something in Jonathan's tone, the genuine warmth, the absence of condescension, made him nod. "Okay," he said softly. Over the next few weeks, Jonathan and Malik spent time together. Jonathan shared stories of his life, the pressure of running a business empire, and the little victories and defeats along the way. But more importantly, he listened, truly listened, to Malik. He heard about the boy's struggles, his family responsibilities, and the small joys he found in daily life. Malik, in turn, shared the quiet wisdom he had gained from caring for his siblings. He spoke about patience, empathy, and the importance of small acts of kindness. Jonathan marveled at how much this boy had endured, yet how unbroken and generous his spirit remained. The bond between them deepened naturally. Lila's laughter became a regular melody in the household whenever Malik visited. Jonathan's staff watched in awe as the billionaire, usually immersed in spreadsheets and strategy meetings, slowed down, prioritizing family and human connection. And Malik, once quiet and reserved, began to open up, gaining confidence in ways he had never imagined. But life, as it often does, wasn't without obstacles. One afternoon, as Jonathan and Malik sat in the home sunlit study, a legal complication arose. Jonathan had recently invested in a foundation aimed at supporting underprivileged children, but bureaucratic red tape threatened to delay Malik's ability to access resources for educational support. The foundation's legal team insisted that Malik's family provide extensive documentation, and Jonathan could see the boy's shoulders slump as the weight of frustration settled in. It's not fair," Malik muttered, voice tight. "I just wanted to help people, and now, this." Jonathan reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "I know it's frustrating, but we're going to fix this, Malik. I won't let bureaucracy stop what matters." Despite Jonathan's wealth and influence, the obstacles were real, tangible, and discouraging. Malik had learned resilience in his own life, but this was different. It was a world he hadn't experienced before, one of policies, paperwork, and endless hurdles. Even the community began to raise doubts. Some neighbors questioned why Malik was spending time with a billionaire, fearing he might lose himself in an unfamiliar world. Others whispered that Jonathan's intentions might not be entirely selfless. Malik felt torn between loyalty to his family, his community, and the trust he had placed in Jonathan. "Why would someone like him even care about me?" Malik asked one evening, staring at the stars above his modest home. Jonathan, standing beside him, didn't offer cliches or empty reassurances. Instead, he said honestly, "Because what you did for Lila showed me the kind of person you are, Malik. And sometimes, the right people notice you, even when the world doesn't." This simple truth began to cement Malik's trust. He had been tested before, by life, by hardship, by doubt, but here was someone willing to act, willing to go beyond words, to truly help. And slowly, he began to believe that perhaps, this connection could lead to something greater. Small gestures began to bridge the gap between their worlds. Jonathan arranged for Malik to attend enrichment programs, to meet tutors, and to experience things he had only dreamed of. Each interaction built not only trust but also hope that kindness could truly create change. Yet tension remained. Bureaucratic obstacles delayed progress, and Malik's self-doubt occasionally flared. Would he be able to navigate a world so different from his own? Could he accept help without feeling like he was betraying the values he had been raised with? Jonathan sensed these doubts and didn't dismiss them. Instead, he encouraged Malik gently. "You don't have to change who you are. We're just opening doors, giving you choices. You decide how far you want to go." And with that, Malik began to see the possibilities, not as a life of wealth, but as a life where his empathy and talents could flourish, where his natural ability to care for others could be nurtured and amplified. Through each challenge, the bond between the billionaire and the boy deepened. They were no longer simply helper and helped. They had become partners in a journey of trust, growth, and hope. The shared experiences, small victories, and moments of vulnerability created a foundation for something extraordinary. Even Lila, the spark that had brought them together, seemed to sense the connection. Her laughter grew freer in Malik's presence, her tiny hands reaching instinctively for the boy who had first shown her comfort. It was as if she, too, understood that kindness had the power to unite worlds that seemed impossible to reconcile. And so, the stage was set for transformation. The obstacles were real and testing, yet both Jonathan and Malik were learning the invaluable lesson that true kindness required patience, persistence, and courage. The hurdles that once seemed insurmountable slowly began to fall away, one by one. Jonathan Pierce refused to let bureaucracy, skepticism, or circumstance stand in the way of helping Malik thrive. With careful planning, persistent advocacy, and personal intervention, the legal red tape that threatened Malik's opportunities began to dissolve. The foundation's resources were unlocked, and soon, Malik found himself enrolled in programs that nurtured his natural talents, leadership, empathy, and childcare skills that had always been his hidden strength. Malik's confidence blossomed. What had once been quiet self-assurance, honed in the shadows of hardship, now radiated outward. He spoke openly about his goals, dreams, and hopes for the future. No longer did he question his worth or the sincerity of those around him. With Jonathan's guidance and support, he began seeing a world of possibilities where his acts of kindness could ripple outward, touching lives far beyond his immediate circle. Lila remained the centerpiece of their bond. The infant, once inconsolable, now giggled freely in Malik's presence. She reached for him eagerly, the stuffed rabbit still clutched in her tiny hands, a symbol of the first connection that had set this transformation in motion. Jonathan, observing this, often found himself reflecting on the journey. He realized that while wealth had brought him comfort and security, it had never given him the kind of fulfillment that Malik's simple, selfless act had provided. As Malik's world expanded, the community began to notice. Neighbors who had once been wary now watched in quiet admiration as the boy's natural leadership and empathy flourished. Malik began mentoring younger children in his neighborhood, teaching them not only practical skills but the importance of listening, caring, and giving without expectation. He had become a beacon of hope, a living example of how a single act of kindness could grow into something much larger. Jonathan and Malik's relationship deepened even further when a major event occurred, a charity gala organized by Jonathan's foundation. The gala was an elegant affair, attended by philanthropists, business leaders, and influential figures from around the world. Yet, the true star of the evening was not the grandeur or the wealth on display, it was Malik. On stage, Malik shared his story. He spoke about his life before the plane ride, the struggles of his family, and the moment he met Jonathan and Lila. He spoke with humility, gratitude, and a quiet strength that captivated everyone in the room. "Kindness," he said, "is something we can all give, no matter how much we have. One act can change a life, maybe even many lives. The audience was moved to tears. Jonathan, seated in the front row, felt a swelling of pride unlike anything he had experienced in boardrooms or business negotiations. This boy, once struggling in a modest neighborhood, had now become an agent of change, an embodiment of hope, resilience, and the power of empathy. Yet transformation wasn't just external, it was deeply personal for both of them. Jonathan, who had always measured success by numbers, deals, and acquisitions, began to reassess his values. He spent more time with family, more time listening, and more time contributing to projects that nurtured human connection rather than just profit. His life, once meticulously scheduled and driven by ambition, now included moments of genuine presence and humility. For Malik, the journey was even more profound. The boy who had once questioned whether anyone truly cared about him now saw the tangible impact of his kindness amplified. He had access to education, mentorship, and opportunities he had never imagined, but he never forgot his roots. He continued to care for his siblings, give back to his neighborhood, and inspire other children facing hardships. The pinnacle of their journey came months later on a quiet afternoon. Jonathan, Malik, and Lila were in the garden of Jonathan's estate, sunlight streaming through the trees. Malik knelt beside Lila, teaching her a simple game. Lila's laughter rang like music, pure and unrestrained. Jonathan watched, overwhelmed with gratitude. "You've changed everything," he said softly to Malik. Malik shook his head, smiling. "No, sir, you just gave me a chance to help. That's all." Jonathan chuckled, tears brimming in his eyes. "It's more than that. You've shown me the value of true kindness. You've changed me, and you've changed her world." It was a full circle moment. The plane ride, once a scene of frustration and helplessness, was now a distant memory, replaced by growth, transformation, and hope. Malik had taken a single act, soothing a crying infant, and transformed it into a life of purpose and impact. Jonathan had witnessed firsthand that wealth could buy many things, but it could not replicate the human connection, empathy, and transformative power of genuine kindness, and the ripple effect continued. Malik's story inspired countless others in both his own community and beyond. Children he mentored began performing small acts of kindness, spreading compassion in ways that Jonathan had never anticipated. The plane ride, once defined by wailing and frustration, had become a symbol of hope, a testament to the idea that even the smallest gestures could set off waves of positive change. By the time Lila was old enough to understand, she would often point to Malik with bright eyes and say, "That's my hero." And for Jonathan, every glance at his daughter was a reminder that moments of true humanity, small, selfless, and powerful, were worth more than every dollar in the world. This story shows how one act of kindness can change everything. What's one way you could make a difference in someone's life today? Challenge yourself and share your commitment in the comments. Months had passed since that life-changing flight, but the impact of that single act of kindness continued to echo across lives. Jonathan Pierce, once absorbed entirely in boardrooms, technology, and high-profile deals, had embraced a new perspective. He spent more time with Lila, more time mentoring and supporting youth, and more time investing in causes that nurtured human connection rather than just financial gain. The experience had taught him that wealth could buy comfort, convenience, and opportunity, but it could not buy the kind of fulfillment that came from witnessing genuine kindness in action. Malik's life had been transformed in ways that went far beyond luxury or privilege. He had access to better education, mentoring, and resources, yet he never forgot where he came from. The same compassion that had calmed a crying infant on a plane now extended to his siblings, neighbors, and the children in his community. He became a role model, not just for children facing hardship, but for adults who had forgotten the power of empathy and selfless giving. Lila, now thriving, had grown up surrounded by love, security, and inspiration. Her bond with Malik remained unshakable. She learned from him the lessons of patience, empathy, and kindness, lessons that money alone could never provide. Jonathan and Malik's story also inspired countless people beyond their immediate circle. Friends, colleagues, and strangers alike heard of the boy with the worn stuffed rabbit who had reminded a billionaire of what truly mattered. Many took small actions themselves, helping neighbors, mentoring children, or simply offering a listening ear. The ripple effect of a single act of kindness had grown far larger than anyone could have anticipated. Stories like this remind us that extraordinary kindness exists all around us. If this touched your heart, please like this video. It helps more people discover these inspiring stories. Subscribe for more tales of human kindness that will restore your faith in humanity. Most importantly, look for opportunities in your own life to be someone's unexpected blessing. What act of kindness will you perform this week? Share your commitment in the comments below. Remember, one small action can change an entire world.